Hello, my name is Jim Unrath, and I'm going to be your host for the colorful and exciting competition between several of the finest drum and bugle corps in the country. With me tonight to comment on the competition is a man who's known throughout the country as the director of one of the finest marching bands in the country, Mr. Mike Leckrone, director of the University of Wisconsin Marching Band. Mike, we all know about marching bands. We've all seen them. Maybe you could tell us just a little bit about the difference between a marching band and a drum and bugle corps, kind of like the ones we're going to see tonight.
Well, I think the primary difference you're going to see is that there's a great deal more emphasis on the competitive aspect. These corps have all prepared their shows down to a very fine point of precision, and they've worked really on one show since back in October sometime, while the bands that you see at football games generally are doing 5 and 6 shows during a season, so naturally their preparation is a different nature, and they're more entertainment orientated than competitive orientated. So from that standpoint, it's really going to be a fine line of competition tonight.
Starting very early this morning, very early indeed, we saw the first of 20 drum and bugle corps in the preliminary elimination competition. Only the top 10 in that preliminary contest made the finals tonight and the chance to compete for almost $20,000 in prize money. We've seen so far 7 of these corps, and we'd like to, if we can, just before we continue, to get some of your ideas, Mike, on some of your comments on what we've seen so far.
Fine, I'll be happy to.
This is the Colt 45, which was our first corps in competition earlier this evening. Corps have recently added mallet percussion to give a new dimension to what I think is already an exciting sound. And of course you can see that a basic difference between corps and band is the fact that the corps are functioning without the benefit of any yard lines. They're doing it all by guiding and with only the center line. The Colt 45 is a young corps. It's always very exciting corps to see, and I think it's going to be a real contender for some national championships in the future. Let's listen to some of their music. The next corps we saw this evening was the Americanos from Appleton, Wisconsin, which is another one of the great Wisconsin corps. Well, this is a very, very young corps. Their performances, which are always Latin American flavored, are always great crowd pleasers. You'll notice that corps are judged for their musical performance as well as the marching and maneuvering, and drummer's stick coordination always has to be perfect. The buglers always have to play the right notes and in tune if a corps is going to score high in competition. Following the Americanos was a corps all the way from New Orleans, Louisiana. I think you'll notice that every bit as important to the musical aspects of the performance are the members of the flag and rifle sections. They spend just as many hours working as the drums and the bugles do, and their efforts are really very important in the general effects score, which is another caption in the judging, which is very important to the final outcome of the corps in the competition. Belleville, Illinois, in the St. Louis area, we next saw the exciting Black Knights, which last year was one of the top 12 corps in the country. While this corps may not score as well in maybe the bugling captions or the drumming captions, their showmanship is always great crowd-pleasing performance, and their version of Chattanooga Choo Choo is always designed to bring the crowd to their feet on the end. corps that hasn't been heard of much in the past, but one which I think is destined to make their mark in the national finals this year is this group from Rockford, Illinois, the Phantom Regiment. As you can probably tell, the selection of music varies greatly from corps to corps, and you wouldn't especially expect to hear a group play the Shostakovich Fifth Symphony, but the Rockford Corps does it and does it very well. Racine Kilties have a drum corps tradition that's probably second to none. They've been the national champions in 1964, 1968, 69, and their uniforms alone make them one of the most distinctive corps in the nation. Kilts always have a reputation of being latecomers in the season. They may not do too well in the beginning of the season, but always by national championship time, they're ready to be one of the top corps. They just finished an arrangement of Eli's Coming from Maynard Ferguson, which shows corps can go from Shostakovich to Ferguson in one swoop. They call themselves the Corps from the land of oranges and sunshine, and in the 10 short years of their existence, the Kingsmen of Orange County, California have already proven themselves to be a real powerhouse in the drum corps world. They capped it all in 1972 when they won the Drum Corps International's first competition. This is a corps that's really strong in every caption. They're strong in drumming, bugling, general effect, showmanship. And of course, that's what it takes if a corps is going to be a national champion, as this corps hopes to be.
This corps is very smooth, and I've known them for a long time. They do some things that have really been influenced, had a big influence on marching bands, and that's this circle that they go into and sunburst out of. I think you'll see more and more bands on television doing circle kind of things, and I think Casper certainly has had that influence on a lot of bands who've been watching it. That's coming up next is from Madison, which is where I'm from, and I know this corps very well, and they have really an exciting show and probably one of the best horn lines maybe in corps competition. I think they really overwhelm groups sometimes with their sound. You have to figure that the next corps, which is probably the farthest away from home, has got a kind of a built-in edge on audience sympathy at any rate. The corps that's about to come up is
is the defending champion of the show. They've long been innovators in music. They do a lot of things that drum corps don't do very often. You do mixed meter marching in marching bands?
Well, more and more bands are doing it, but I think certainly the innovations came out of the drum corps when you see them marching mixed meter out there, and they do it so smoothly that you really don't know that it's going on. You have to see that
We're talking about different tempos, and we'll see it right now.
The Guardsmen had the privilege of leading off tonight's competition, and they're the envy of the 13 other corps that they were able to eliminate from the finals. It's another fine corps from the Chicagoland area. They're very young, but they're gaining more and more respect in the drum corps world. Let's listen to some of their performance. This is the Pioneers from Milwaukee, and they're performing Temptation, a song that was first introduced on the marching field by the University of Michigan Band. This is another excellent Wisconsin corps with a swing style that always has great audience appeal. Well, rains really came down in the middle of the Capitol Freelancers presentation, and you can see the water bouncing off the drum heads and the bugles. But in a tradition of drum corps everywhere, the show went on, and the damp but enthusiastic crowd loved every moment of the rendition of Bully. The rain didn't last very long, and by the time the Phantom Regiment had made their appearance, it had almost completely stopped. This is a group that is sure to be one of the powers of drum corps, and they made a very dramatic flag presentation by combining the music of Wagner with some extremely spectacular color guard work. Cavaliers have the reputation of being the winningest group in all of drum corps history. They have 11 national titles to their credit. The Green Machine has always had an excellent drum line that features a flawless stick technique. Let's hear how the total percussion section has become such a vital part of the drum corps sound of today. The Racine Kilts are a perennial powerhouse in national competition, and Eric Whitmore, their drum major, has become a crowd favorite wherever the corps is performing. Here he shows off some of his conducting technique with a bit of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Very few musical selections this season have been able to generate the audience excitement that Kilts achieve with their flag work, soloists, and just sheer musical drive of their classy rollover Beethoven. Let's hear the rest of it. Drum corps competitions are won or lost by the execution of the individual members, and the lacrosse Blue Stars have developed a smooth, error-free style that makes them contenders in every contest they enter. Here they move into a finale formation that makes an impressive climax to their show. Blue Devils are another California corps that have come virtually out of nowhere to challenge the best in the nation. The trademarks of all the Blue Devil productions are the excellent jazz phrasings of all the players, the fine blend of the horn line, and their spectacular coverage of the field with rifles, flags, and just superb musicianship. I'd like to watch a bit more of the Blue Devils to illustrate how drill designers are using the space and the musicians for much more highly refined movements. This is one area where drum corps most differs from the marching band. In fact, it's become more like a choreography. And you'll notice the special movements all fit the big band sound of this very fine corps.
Well, they're a corps which just overpowers you with their sound. They've got one of the great horn lines, really, and tonight they're trying a little strategy. They finished second, but they're the defending champions, so they elected to go in the second to last spot instead of ending up in the final spot. This gives them a chance to show off their audience appeal before we get to the Santa Clara Vanguard. Santa Clara is next. They only beat the Scouts this afternoon by 0.15 of a point. So we're going to see just a tremendous windup of this contest. There's no doubt about it.